Hello and welcome to Maine Law Matters. I'm Lee Softly, the current president and dean of the University of Maine School of Law. It is today, Friday, May 29th, 2026, and for Maine Law Matters, I have the honor of interviewing Phyllis Givertz, one of my role models through years of law practice. Good afternoon, Phyllis. How are you?
I'm wonderful. I'm so glad to be here, Lee.
I'm so excited to see you again. This is wonderful, and I'm grateful for your time. And just to show how grateful I am, I'm going to start off with an accusation.
Uh-oh.
You are not from Maine.
I am not.
Tell us about your earliest years.
We moved to Maine in 1963, my husband and I did, because my husband was asked to, he's a cardiologist, and he was asked to establish a cardiac catheterization lab, which was the newest thing.
One of the first.
One of the first in Maine. I think it was the first in Maine. So we came along with our two little kids and couldn't believe we were in Maine. We had both grown up in Cleveland, Ohio, and then we went to Los Angeles, where you had a cardiology residency. Then we spent 2 years in Chicago, and then we landed in Portland, Maine. And Portland, Maine, in 1963, was pretty grim. It was just grim. It was very gray. It was very depressing. But we met some wonderful people right away who we became very close with. We remain very close friends of today. I'm sure you know all of them. And we learned to ski. And honestly, that saved us.
Wow. So you have watched Portland grow up.
Just transform.
It's been pretty amazing. I grew up in South Portland. Portland was a place you did not go unless you absolutely had to, because there were worries about safety. It was a bit grim. Congress Street was the only area with commercial activity at the time.
Rennie's was probably already there.
It probably was. And I remember when my parents allowed me to take the bus from South Portland to Portland to go shopping, and it was a big deal. There was a question about whether I would come back alive, and I was probably 15 years old. So, but it has changed so dramatically, and the old port has just exploded with activity and excitement.
Yeah.
And there are lots of people here now.
And a lot of cars.
So talk to me about you. Didn't you start at Case Western?
I did. 1 year there.
1 year there.
Then when we moved to Portland, I enrolled at USM, which was then
Portland Gorham or Pogo or something.
Something like that. And I graduated from there.
What was your degree?
It was in European history, which I so much wanted to continue. I thought I would get a doctorate in history. I loved history, and it just was not available. There was no such thing as a graduate degree at that time. I don't even know if there is. I doubt if there is now. Not sure. But I looked across the street, and there was this law school, and I thought, maybe I could do that, because I sure wasn't going back in the kitchen, and I already had a couple of kids.
And how old were your kids at that point?
So this was in 71, so our daughter was born in 61, and our next child was born in 62, and our next child in 65. So they were little people. But I had a very supportive, and still do, husband who was all for whatever I wanted to try.
Whatever you wanted.
Whatever I wanted to do. Except at the dinner table when he would say, "Don't talk to me like a lawyer." But
it's the doctor-lawyer thing.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. But I thought, maybe I could do that. And it was just...
So you took the LSAT?
Yes. Scared to death about them.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you remember taking that?
I do, but more importantly about that, by the end, I had already been tapped to be a law clerk. So it would have, I think, been a summer law clerk to Justice Charles Pomeroy.
Justice Pomeroy.
And I was so worried. What if I hadn't passed? Well, that would have been the bar exam,
Right.
Not the LSATs. Yeah, I'm not sure that I did it. Were the LSATs then?
They were required.
Then I must have taken them and done okay.
And you've blocked it out.
Mostly,
a lot of us have.
Mostly, I was concerned about the bar exam.
Yeah.
So much so that I was smoking at that time, I'm ashamed to say.
Oh.
And
Wait, you were married to a cardiologist and you were smoking.
I told you he was very supportive.
He's very supportive.
Very supportive husband. Either that or he was afraid. He never smoked. And, but I made a promise. I had a half a pack of Marlboros left, and I made a pact with God. And I said, if you just let me pass the bar exam, I promise I'll never smoke again. And I had to throw out a half a pack of Marlboros.
No kidding.
Yes, but it was okay.
And you never smoked again?
I never smoked.
Cold turkey?
Cold turkey, it never bothered me. I was so committed to that.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And so you're still here, which is
glad to say.
Even better. That's great.
I don't want to tell you how many years later, but
No, we don't talk about that.
no, we don't.
We don't.
Not at my age, we don't.
So when you graduated, you went to work with Justice Pomeroy?
Yes, I clerked for a
And
year.
when you graduated from law school, did you have an idea of what you wanted to do?
I think I already then was somewhat attracted to family law. But back then, it was hardly even a discipline, a legal discipline. There was very little law, very little precedent. But it came naturally to me. I grew up in a home. My father was a rabbi.
Oh.
And I used to go with him to when he would be a pastoral counselor. So it felt natural to me to do something that was very personally relational. And then I stood on the shoulders of Caroline Glassman
Right.
and Judy Potter. And they really were my mentors, my role models.
In your law school class, how many women?
6 in a class of 95.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. So that was,
And I was the oldest.
what year? That was
71 to 74. I graduated in 74.
So 6 years later, I graduated in the class of 80, and 45 of the 90 students were women.
Wow.
It happened that fast.
And it's now what, equal?
It's now more women than men most of the time. So we watched you and the women around you figure out how to work with other professionals, we're going to just say male professionals, who weren't necessarily ready for us. How did that go for you when you started?
You know, I think I considered that myself. I thought that I had to represent men because I would not be able to be successful if men did not accept me as their attorney. And that was a job I had to do. And I thought that I had to do that by looking successful before I was successful, because I thought that's what men would be drawn to. And so I was very keen on making my first law office look successful. I remember getting my first Oriental rug when nobody knew anything about Oriental rugs, but I thought I should have an Oriental rug. And I should have art on the walls. And I hired a person to decorate my reception area so it looked like it was successful.
Great success.
Yeah. And it wasn't that easy for men, I think, to accept a woman attorney. It became actually almost strategic later on.
Yes.
When men thought they needed to have a woman attorney.
That's right.
If they were in a conflict divorce.
But before that, there were years when it was sort of, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
And how about the attorneys that you worked with at the time who were men? Did they I remember Mary Toussaint's stories about interviewing with firms, and they would ask her two questions. The first question was, how fast do you type? And the second question was, what form of birth control do you use?
Really?
And of course, we were all outraged when
That's shocking.
when it was a very
Still is, to even hear that.
5 to 6 years made such a huge difference. But the firms would say, we don't want to invest in you and then have you get pregnant and go home. And we would say, that's not anything you should be considering. They did with a number of women who were interviewing. But you set up your own practice.
No, I actually first joined a firm that had a lot of names, the first of which was Lowry.
Oh.
Lowry.
Oh.
I think it was Lowry, Platt, Fitzhenry, Lunt, and then I came along at the end, Givertz, and we were on Exchange Street, on the corner of Exchange and Middle, in a wonderful corner building there.
Right.
And then Steve Lunt and I decided to go out on our own, the two of us, and we did. We started a firm called Givertz and Lunt.
I remember.
We loved practicing law together, and to this day we still keep in touch. And then from there, and I think that's at the time at which we began to think of ourselves as being family practitioners, which just wasn't thought of, I don't think, at the time.
That's right.
Yeah.
During the 70s, late 70s into early 80s, the child protection laws arrived, and then in the early 80s, the child support changes started to happen, and we began to see a whole lot of changes in how the firms worked. Some people really loved family law, and it was very clear that from the beginning there were a lot of people who just absolutely didn't want to have anything to do with it. You were a client counselor from the very beginning. You were a solid supporter of your client, but the sharp practices that we saw from some people, we never saw from you. And I remember on any number of occasions, you would say, I need a small break while my client and I have a conversation, and then things would go more smoothly. Did you learn that from your dad? Did you just come by it naturally?
I think as women came more into the profession, the profession got more humanized, almost maternal in some ways.
Yes.
And I also thought that the family group in the Portland area that I knew, it was a great group of lawyers, Michael Asen and people like that, and we really cared about. And Caroline Glassman, I learned from her that it was so important if you could settle. Yes. Caroline and I never went into a conflicted trial, really? Ever. Yeah. And we had a lot of cases.
Wow.
And I think I would say I thought I was a pretty, tough advocate, and she certainly was. But I think we both prided ourselves on being able to find our way for both of our clients to settle and to compromise. And I think both of us believed that had a longevity to it.
So this brings me to, I remember a family law training at some point, and hearing you describe what happens to people when they have to go to trial. They can't find some way to resolve the matters, and going to trial, they had to say bad things about the other person, and they could never forget what they heard.
Yeah.
So we were all beginning to understand that the difference between a trial and a settlement wasn't necessarily the outcome of the specific disputes. It was the outcome of the way people had behaved with regard to each other over time. Settlements allowed people to resolve their battles without saying the bad things they would like to have said during that one period of their life. So, I mean, you were teaching all of us from the very beginning, and that just seemed to come naturally to you.
I don't know whether you told me this, Lee. One of my role models did, that I should bear in mind that most people first encountered the justice system through a divorce process.
Yes.
And probably had never been in a courthouse before then, and how important it was for all of us who represented our profession to be our best.
Yeah.
And I really took that to heart.
Very much that's where ordinary people get into the courthouse.
Yeah.
Divorces, your own, your sisters, your families,
Right.
That's where you see the court system. And one of the things that shocked me early on outside of Portland was how bad the facilities were for family law cases. In Bangor, the family law courtroom was downstairs in the building that had once been a grocery store, with rough-hewn wood for the witness, a judge in a sort of makeshift box, people sitting in terrible old chairs, and no one really caring that it felt, you thought about your office, how important it was to look professional. That was something that just shocked me when I first started working as a judge. So it's one of the reasons that we spent a lot of time on the power of place around things. And I was emulating you and I didn't even know it. This is fascinating.
What came about when I started practicing was mediation, or alternative dispute resolution.
That's right.
Of that kind. And I remember litigators would say to me, we're litigators.
Right.
We don't do,
Whatever this ADR
mediate,
thing
whatever
is.
that is. So it really took a while to bring mostly the male attorneys around to seeing, they had no choice after a while because it became mandatory.
Right.
Before you could put on a conflicted divorce. And we all were learning. Kids First was born during that time. We were all learning about how children were impacted by divorce. And so I think I got a call one day in my office from the Today Show. It was in the 80s. It was probably when I was president of the bar, because I don't know how else they would know me. But they called, asked me if I'd come because they understood that mediation had become this thing in the state. And I think we followed California. I don't think that we originated that. But there was no way I was going to New York to sit in the Today Show and talk about mediation.
That's wild.
Yeah, but I think we were certainly, Cushman Anthony.
Right.
I remember being
one of the first
of
very much into mediation.
Yeah.
And he brought the sort of Quaker approach with him, and it was really lovely. The interesting thing about that period of time was how angry some of the lawyers were that this was mandated. They were, this was a battle. We were going to win the battle.
I'd forgotten that.
And there were a lot of very angry lawyers until everyone figured out that the problems could actually be solved and it wasn't going to eliminate the need for lawyers. I think that was the concern. If they don't need us to go into battle, they won't need lawyers.
Right.
But in fact, people are crazy when they're getting divorced. Well,
really?
You knew that.
I never noticed that.
You never noticed. And having a lawyer who can help you work through all of the issues made a huge difference. Yeah. So did you enjoy the mediation pieces of the work?
Very much so.
And
I really did.
Did you find that people listened to you?
I think that's a good question. I think divorce clients, and it might go both ways. But I think that's a tricky relationship, a divorce client and divorce attorney, because you become very connected and very reliant on one another, and you need to have distance. You need to keep your roles clear. I learned a lot about mediation from Dana Cleaves.
Oh, yes.
And I think he taught a lot of lawyers about how that could work.
And judges along the way. So you have just actually mentioned something I was going to ask you about, and that is for many of the people who do family law in any of its incarnations, one of the most important skills, human skills, is figuring out your own boundaries so that first, you're not absorbing all of the pain people are going through. And second, you can keep that professional relationship with someone who you know a lot of intimate information about.
Right.
And so, again, did that come naturally to you? Were you able to do that from the very beginning as you started practice?
No, I'm glad you asked me that, because I don't think that I've ever thought about that way. I think I had to take a breath from time to time and just move back a little bit, because it's my natural inclination to be close to people, and if I really liked my clients, which I did, I loved some of my clients, but had to retain that relationship. Not to mention that you had to send them a bill.
Yes, yes.
And if you were in a firm, you really had to do that, and you had to keep your hours. And,
right.
But I think the lawyer-client relationship in a family matter is very, very special, but can also be fraught.
It can be fraught.
Yeah.
Yeah. And some of the attorneys that I saw lose their way, become really unable to control their own behavior, were those whose boundaries broke down, and they were living the pain of their clients, and so their behavior in a courtroom or even in a hallway could get very troubling. But people found it very difficult to hear from a judge, you've lost your sense of balance. You've got to stop. And I only had to do that a couple of times, but it's very hard when you see a wonderful lawyer, somebody smart and good, get lost in the midst of it all. Doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it's kind of painful to watch.
Well, I think that it was pretty easy to get started in the practice of family law in Portland, because the big firms, the Bernstein Schurs and the Pierce Atwoods, wanted no part of divorce.
Right.
But they had corporate clients.
Right.
Who might want to get a divorce, and they realized that, if they could send their client to me, they would keep the client.
Yes.
They would keep the corporate client.
Right.
Because I wasn't about to steal the client from them. I was just going to do their divorce.
Right. So good relationships.
So
with
good
the
relationships with
larger
those firms. Yeah, they were happy actually to be able to have somebody they could look to. Yeah.
Here is someone we trust, and we trust for more reasons than the client's ever going to understand. At some point, I'm not sure I'm remembering this right, but at some point it was you, Liz Sheffy, and Meg?
Meg.
So were you the first all-female firm?
Oh, I don't know. No, because there was a two-woman firm. Forgetting who it is. But I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No. And anyway, Steve was there before.
Oh, he was.
And Clark Hambley was there.
Clark.
Before, yeah.
Wow.
They were there before Liz and Meg. But I loved Liz and Meg, and I still love Liz, still keep in very close contact with her, and Meg we lost, unfortunately.
Oh. Yeah. We are getting to that point where most of us are seeing our old friends only at funerals. It's a tough thing to get here. So talk to me a little bit about what it was like. You are fully retired.
Yeah. Have
So,
been for a long
and
time.
you've heard my funny story. I was so impressed with you in the courtrooms that when Bill and I have been married for 45 years, and when things would go slightly off track, I would say to him, "I'm calling Phyllis."
So many people tell me that. I'm not kidding.
You are
I
the
never knew
one.
whether that was a compliment.
Oh yes, absolutely, absolutely. So, so that was my, I'm calling Phyllis, and he came home gleefully just a little while ago. Had read something in one of the bar things that said you were doing something, but you were retired from practice, and threw it on. You're stuck with me forever. Phyllis has retired. So, what was it like getting to the point of winding down a practice that had been such a personal practice for all those years?
I think that I knew when it was time to hang up my shingle. And I think it was about when I hit Social Security age. Mm-hmm. And I think I actually stepped away at around 67. And so Bernie and I are 8 years apart. So Bernie would have already, at 75, have retired from practicing medicine. And that was mostly because he was not going to learn the internet. And the hospital became all digitized.
All digital.
But it felt right. And it felt
So
time.
you were ready.
And I ran into a lawyer recently, not from here, but who had just retired at a social event. And he said, "What did you do when you retired?" And I said, "Well, why do you ask?" And he said, "Because I'm going to retire." And he said, "I haven't a clue about what to do." And I said, "Well, I decided that I was going to do something that I didn't know anything about. So I decided to take up the cello."
Really?
And for 3 years, I took cello lessons, and I could never make a sound that I was proud of. And I said, that's the end of that. After that, I just read a lot and hiked and did
So
things like
are
that.
you, and hike, that you have to do that outdoors, so that's off my list. So everybody in our generations is talking about what do you do in retirement to keep your brain fresh and to stay both physically and mentally active. And everybody has suggestions like learning a new language, no longer possible at our age. There's no brain center
it
to learn a
doesn't
new
work.
language. So now I know I can cross cello off the list.
If I were you,
yes,
I would.
I'll do that. I played piano when I was younger for not a lot of
So
years.
did I, yeah.
My right hand will still play the piano, and my left hand will just lie there like, what do you want me to do about this? So it's all a challenge, but you were very much involved with the Bar Association, you were part of the Gang of Five.
I was.
Talk to me about that a little bit. That's
the Maine Justice Foundation you're talking about. You're
which is
talking about Volunteer Lawyers Project.
Yes.
What a heady time that was.
Extraordinary organization.
Great people. Howdy Dana.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it was you, Mary Shandell,
Mary.
Howard, David Kennedy,
Oh, David.
and Kinvin
And Kinvin.
was involved
Yeah,
in
right.
the original Gang of Five. And so what got that started?
We learned, and I don't know how we found this out, that when lawyers had their client accounts, escrow accounts, they threw it was in for quite a long while. They would throw off interest.
Right.
Well, whose interest was that? Well, the banks thought it was their interest. And we said, no, why would it be your interest? And we discovered there was a lot of money there. And that's when we thought, we can use that for a good purpose. And
so
all
you
we had
came
to
up
do
with
was,
the IOLTA.
we had to convince the banks, but
Right.
the banks, it was a losing cause
was
for
a
the
no-win
banks
for them to
because
fight
what was
that.
their argument? No, we don't want to use it for charitable.
Right.
No,
Right.
which is what we wanted to do with it.
Yes.
And that is what started the Volunteer Lawyers Project,
Wow.
which has been so
Oh,
wonderful.
what a godsend to so many people.
Yeah.
And now the Bar Foundation does a whole lot of additional pieces to keep the legal services
Beyond
groups.
beyond even family
Yes,
stuff, right?
yes, yeah.
Bankruptcies,
Right.
and
And
renters,
with the IOLTA dollars, some of the IOLTA dollars, not a lot, but some of them actually come to Maine Law to help us run the clinic,
oh,
which has a fairly broad reach these days. And that Bar Foundation is set up sufficient so that it could create the Lawyers Fund, which has just brought in way more than IOLTA did originally.
and it's a granting organization.
So it all comes in and then goes right back out to legal service organizations, Pine Tree, to legal services, to some of the immigration law practices these days. So you really started, that was
that was so exciting.
thing, a really big thing.
I think we learned that about that interest that was lying there waiting to be used from Canada. That's my memory of it.
Wouldn't be surprised because they have an IOLTA related
Yeah, I think
system.
they cottoned onto that before
And you know,
we
it just
did.
got challenged again
Oh, really?
in a federal court.
As a
and
taking
so
of
far
property?
has stood up. Well, I mean, you've got how many? Either 27 people have their funds in there, or in a large firm, it's hundreds of people. You couldn't possibly track
figure
all
out
of
whose
that.
it is.
And the banks have been unable through the years to marshal the argument that we should keep it, we should keep it. So it still stands
useful.
everywhere.
Good.
And you were the first woman to be president of the Bar Association.
I was. 93 years it took.
93 years.
And I don't know if that's true. I was also the first female bar examiner, and I don't know how many years that took.
Is that right?
Yeah. And I'll tell you a quick little thing. I was once, because the grading went on in August, right? Late August.
Right.
And one August, my husband was at a cardiology meeting in Israel, and I wanted to meet him there. So I took all the blue books with me in a bag, and to fly to Israel, but I needed to keep grading them. And we had a stop in some mid Zurich or whenever, and I was busily grading blue books when they had called the plane. They'd called my flight. And I heard it, and I ran up to the Swiss Air desk, and I asked about the flight, and I just remember this woman just being so officious. And she said, "Well, madam, that plane is boarding. You'll never make it to the gate." I said, "Well, could you tell me what gate it is?" And it was an El Al flight. It wasn't Swiss Air. It was an El Al flight, and they wouldn't tell me what the gate was. I said, "But I really have to know." Talked her into it because they would not. It was too dangerous for them to even come to the gateway. They had to be parked out.
Oh my gosh.
On the tarmac. So I went running out there with my blue books.
With the blue books. And you made it?
I made it.
Oh
I
my
made it
God.
To the flight. Yeah.
The thought that the bar exam blue books were flying around the world in the midst of all of that, that's wild. Did you enjoy grading them?
I did when it was obvious whether it was easy or, or it was just definitely, but it pained me so not to pass someone. Mm-hmm. Really. I don't want to make that a sexist thing, but I just felt maternal about that.
So that was hard.
And to do that was.
So good blue books, those were fun?
Yeah. Yeah, I enjoyed doing that.
Did you ever think of teaching?
I didn't, no. But I love the fact that I have a granddaughter who's a teacher, who's at the front of a classroom teaching in a public school.
That's wonderful.
I just think it's God's work.
It absolutely is. I don't think there's anything harder or more important.
Yeah, exactly.
If you were talking to brand new lawyers right now, what advice would you give them about thinking of a career in family law?
I really felt it was a privilege to practice family law. I think it's the discipline in the law that where you have the closest client contact, even though it maybe brings some drawbacks, but it's a very human way to practice law. And you also find when you're practicing family law that you team with a lot of other kinds of experts, like accountants and business people and counselors, psychiatrists. It's really, at one point, I think I contacted the Board of Bar Overseers to ask them if our firm could bring in a mental health professional as part of our team, and I was told no. And I'm not sure
That's
what the
changing, but it was
you couldn't
so strict
you couldn't share
about it.
legal fees.
Correct.
I forget what the term is for that. There is a
term.
legal
There is a term for
prohibition
it.
about that.
And you know,
And we
it's
were
been
told
so
we couldn't
long, you
share
just
a
couldn't
legal
do
fee.
it at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that, of course, the way that broke down over time was not around family law or people who really needed services. It broke down around the money professions. So bringing forensic accountants into the larger firms, that has begun to happen. You
it has.
You have to have the right walls around where the funding moves. There are, I think, a number of firms who are, what would we say, partnering with, as opposed to bringing them into the firms these days. Practicing family law without a counselor to help you work your way through some of the really difficult issues and make sure that what you're doing is good for the children. Because I remember when the deal was shared parenting was the right thing to do, because both parents should have good relationships with the children. And so what you're going to do is have the child here one day and here the next day and here the next day. So the children go bouncing through a week. And we all thought we were doing wonderful things, and then realized that the children were not doing well with those kinds of arrangements at all. It was good to have people who could help us understand the consequences of all of our good deeds over time.
Yeah.
So that's fascinating. And would you recommend it as a career?
Absolutely.
That's wonderful.
It's so rewarding. It's so challenging. I mean, you're certainly needing to use your brain cells, but you're needing to use your heart. And I think the combination in a lawyer
it's a good life.
Is about as good as can get. I would tell anyone who wanted to practice family law that, except for, the profitability, it is low. It definitely is. It's not going to be the big bucks. And you're probably not even going to be in a large firm if that's what you think you want to be. But it'll bring you so many great days when you just feel so good about yourself. I'll tell you one quick little thing. I had a divorce once, a contested divorce. Dana Cleves was the judge. And in the middle of it, the question came up about the value of their car. And the client, I think it was the wife on the stand, looked behind the lawyer who asked the question and said, "Honey, how much did we pay for that car?" And Dana Cleves just stopped the proceeding. He said, "I want to see lawyers in chambers. I want to see the lawyers in chambers." And he said to us, "I'm not granting this divorce. I'm just telling you, this is what I'm willing to do." And we were like, "Are you kidding? We're not going out and telling our clients that you won't grant an uncontested divorce." He said, "No, but this is what I'm willing to do. You go out, you tell your clients they need to do some counseling for 6 months. If the end of that 6 months they still want a divorce, I'll grant it. But I'm not granting it today."
Wow.
He just heard that.
And that did it.
He just,
That's
and they
wild.
stayed together.
They did?
Yeah.
Oh, what a great story.
They've been together forever.
That is a great way
Yeah.
to end this interview. Thank you
Really?
so much, Phyllis.
One of my
That's
favorite-
wonderful.
One of my favorite stories. I
What
just
a great
thought of that.
story. Wow. Thank you for being here.
Thank you
has
for
been
having me.
Wonderful. I'm so happy
Oh, I loved
you were
seeing
able
you,
to be
Lee.
here. It's great to see you again.